Today on the Self Smarter podcast.
We're built to interact with other people. There is, to me, an innate relationship that we have of providing our own opinions and having them, as well as others. And I think opinions are fantastic when we need them in a way in order to move forward. That's when, to me, a burden sets in. Hi, we're Danelle and Megan, the hosts of this conversation-centric podcast for leaders seeking to be better every day. Whether you choose to be a leader in the workplace, at home, or in your community, we believe the most effective leaders are equipped to not only be self-starters, but self-smarter.
Hello and welcome to Self Smarter. I'm Megan and this is my friend and co-host Danelle.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. I thought it would be fun if we kicked off episode 98 today with a discussion about New York City apartment realities.
Okay.
And here's why. So how many people did you think, like when you leased your apartment in New York City, did you ever imagine yourself hosting? Like what number would you think would fit in your apartment? Why don't you give us a little background about your apartment, the size?
I mean, it's a one-bedroom.
Right.
Living room, bathroom, kitchen.
Like all the essentials.
Yeah, and it's 700 and some change square feet.
Okay.
So but for New York,
it's a great apartment.
It's a great apartment.
I'm not saying it's
and our
not.
listeners who've been around, you've seen a lot of it. Yeah.
How many people, listeners?
Well, there's a 4-person table in there, but we found ways, like if I had more than 4 people, I could entertain people eating in different spaces.
Yeah.
So up until this, I know what you're going to bring up, up until this last December, I think the most people I'd ever had in there that were eating and drinking food maybe was 7 or 8.
Right. Which sounds like a lot.
Like to me, that was, so you asked me, what's the number? I always thought, well, that's kind of the cap.
The cap, 7 or 8. Mm-hmm. Fair. Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. This is such a random topic, but
It is, but it's important to me because I'm just proud of it. So in December, it was snowing a little bit. I was there, and there was a big trade show, which just y'all in all of Manhattan, in all of the world, this trade show is next door.
Our industry, in our industry.
In our industry, so like going even more finite. This trade show is happening next door to Danelle's apartment.
Yeah.
Well, we know a lot of people in the industry. Old friends, old colleagues. I mean, you've been in this industry how long?
Coming up on 30 years.
30 years. I've been in it for 17. So we know people. So what's going to happen? Danelle's going to go to a trade show.
So I was supposed to be talking about business.
Yeah. What do y'all think? You know what? Okay. Why don't y'all just meet us, at 3 or 4? Just come on over to the apartment. That's great. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what?
People haven't seen in a while.
Well, they haven't. They haven't seen your apartment at all.
Right. Well, I hadn't seen them in a while, so there was that.
Yes.
So then it would lead to the invite. Yeah.
But you were like, it's just going to be small and like little and like nobody, not a big deal. Okay. After the 50th time you said that, I started to sweat a little. Like I was like, okay, well, now we're going to do we have food? Do we have drink? Do we have space? And I think you and I were walking back into the apartment to prepare for this impromptu soiree. And I go, do you think everybody's going to be able to fit in here? And you were like, well, I don't know. I guess we'll just overflow into the hallway. And I'm thinking, this is when she gets evicted. Today is the day. On my watch, she's going to get evicted. Guess how many people came to that party? I
didn't think, I've always thought you invite more and then people aren't going to come because surely people have plans in New York City. I don't know. Like we
don't know. That's the answer.
I didn't invite 50 people, but I talked a lot.
No. You told people who came with multiples.
Oh yeah.
So she'll we're walking and hi. Okay. Well, I'm going to have this little soiree later. No big deal. Like 4:00. And they'd be like,
I was just like, come by.
I'm here with all my team. Is that cool? And then I was like, yeah. It's like that. It's the
I'm a
multiples.
7 on the Enneagram. The more the merrier.
I know. Well, we had more, and they were very merry.
They were, because you were making really great cocktails, and I had an
fun.
abundant supply of wine, and then we pulled together this food, and everybody
fun.
seemed to like it. But yeah, there was a lot of people. I was surprised at how many people could fit in the apartment.
Same. That's the big aha.
I mean, I think the number at one point was 25.
Sure. I know that people
And David's like, what? 'Cause
everywhere.
David's recording, and he's recorded in the apartment and been there quite a bit. And yeah, we had 25 people.
At one point, I was having.
And I was so proud that I had a coat rack. But guess
No,
what?
I know.
You don't have a coat rack that can hold 25.
No, not that many. No, you had a bed.
I had a bed.
that everybody was laying their stuff on. But at one point, I was having a wonderful conversation, a delightful conversation with someone while standing in your bedroom.
Yeah. I mean, you have.
I was making my
it was
way
cozy.
around.
It was cozy.
Yeah, it was. But
Yeah.
it was super nice.
No, it was great. It was the holidays, and I'm blessed. I have an incredible view of Manhattan, and it was just a pretty night. And it was fun to have buddies that I hadn't, from the industry who are typically not in Manhattan.
Yeah.
To come over, and they really loved it, and it felt fun. But I didn't know where you were headed with this note that says,
Banter.
let's talk about apartments. But now I see. Okay.
Well, and another thing that was really fun for me was some people were like, look at this view. Because y'all have seen on the video or the pictures of Danelle's apartment, it's just a lot of glass that overlooks the city. And so on
And the
11th
Hudson.
Ave and the Hudson. And so these people are like getting up next to the windows. I don't really know if you knew this or not, but like leaning their heads, kind of like they were like at a museum or something. And I said, y'all don't need to be doing that. And I think they thought I was talking about like getting off your windows.
Yeah.
I said, what you need to do is grab these binoculars and look in these windows. I couldn't get the binoculars back, and then I kind of felt bad for invading
'cause
on
I don't
other
use
people's
those.
privacy.
Right.
I know. I think I bought them for you, or Drew. Somebody.
No, Drew bought them for me.
It was it might have.
For his own.
He might have had a hint.
Yeah. You hinted that.
Maybe.
He was so excited about those, and I don't know how to work them, but I think and Mackie and I've talked about this, like, when you live in New York, you really don't pay attention, but you do have to kind of be cognizant.
Careful.
Because you can see right through.
You can see everything.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting experience.
Like, I could draw out for you right now what the apartments look like across from your apartment
right.
on 2 floors.
So I think, well, that's because you're
Obsessed.
I was going to use the word nosy, but
I just think it's
obsessed
so
is
interesting. I'm like, oh,
more.
look at her plant. It's thriving. Like things like that. Like, I care about these people, and I don't know who they are.
Yeah, I just don't have eyesight that can bring me that much visual
I can
context.
see far, but I can't see close.
Right. I think it's just interesting about today's episode about, embracing independence from other people's opinions, because
What do y'all think of me right now?
yeah, I had to shake that, because it is kind of like, you invite someone to your home, and a spacious home in Texas.
Yes.
And then you invite him to a 700 square foot apartment. I mean, it's
different.
It's a very personal experience. So opinions can be formed very quickly.
Aw, but your place is so
it's great.
wonderful. It's
but
beautiful.
One way or the other. Anyway, it was just nice.
It was nice.
And
Thank
I
you to
appreciate
those
it.
of you who are listening, because I know a lot of you listen to the podcast. We're so glad you came. That was
And for those of you who haven't been, you have an open invitation to come visit. So please do.
Yeah, she
While I'm
means
there.
it. And then I can tag along, because I will have FOMO about it. Okay, before we get into our topic, let's hop to this quick advertisement. It's a new year, Self Smarter listeners, and never is there a better time than now to delve into your business's marketing plan for the upcoming year. At DMA, we're eager to help you do everything you got going on with marketing, but especially the things that you should be thinking about right now. For instance, let's finalize that marketing plan. Let's get your trade show booths and plans in order for the year. Let's analyze your digital marketing efforts for the prior year and put those learnings to work for you this coming year. Everything social media related. We can help you grow your community, engage with people more often, and ultimately build a relationship between your business and your prospective customers. No matter your marketing goal for the upcoming year, our team of marketers is ready to help you. To contact us, simply reach out to info@dma-solutions.com, and we'll schedule a call to get down to business. Okay, so today we're talking about embracing independence from other people's opinions. And why do we feel like this is necessary? And I was telling Danelle earlier, I was saying, I think this is something we really should talk about, because I think a lot of times, not just as leaders, as humans.
Yes. This is a human-centric podcast episode for sure.
Yeah, that we feel like we're trying to please people by caring what they think about us. I know this to be true firsthand, but have worked very hard to overcome this. So if I'm thinking about a new year, new you, as they say, this is something that we could all potentially be thinking about more, is embracing the independence from that. It's almost like like a cage to feel that way. So of course, as leaders, we all have a desire to be well regarded. And liked. Is what I'm saying making sense? Is what I'm doing best? If you are relegated to other people's opinions and worrying about that all the time, you will never decide. And you will never make probably sound decisions that are what's best for the whole versus what's best for yourself. So we'll go into some more facts like that, or just things for us to think about as we think about separating ourselves from this, cage of worrying so much about what people think about us. And it's really all about finding the balance.
Yep.
So there's a quote that I wanted to share that I really like. I've heard this before, but I thought it was perfect for this episode. And it's, be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind.
Right.
And that's by Dr. Seuss. And I can't think of anything better than to kick off a year with that in mind, because it's going to get us to our authentic selves, which if we are behaving more authentically, then we are more than likely doing very well. Yeah. I do believe that. So what do you think about this topic?
I think, gosh, when you pitched this episode and I started to think about it, I started to think about, obviously, the way it's structured, the title and the information we're sharing, we're really focusing on, in the way, I love the way you titled it, Embracing Independence from Other People's Opinions. I believe that oftentimes we can be paralyzed by other people's opinions. So I think that's what we're trying to uncover here, bring you some validation that it's a normal feeling, and really talk through some ways to manage, again, the weight that other people's opinions can bear on you. I will also say I can provide a case to the other way of thinking about other people's opinions.
Okay.
Again, can't say it enough. The catalyst for this journey that we've been on for the last 9 years was predicated on the fact that I got a 26% approval rating at the time from 7 employees. And as a leader, not in all categories, but in enough to show me that I had a lot of work to do. Those questions were opinions. They were opinions about me, and they mattered because I decided they mattered. So I think as we go into this episode, I think what I would encourage leaders to do, and again, I think this episode is really people, or call us leaders, because I believe that we all are. We're not listening to this podcast.
Sure.
No matter what your role is in leadership, is that as people, we understand the role of other people's opinions and when to allow them to serve us, and when other people's opinions may potentially be to our detriment. And are we aware? Can we sit in awareness of when that is and learning that discipline?
Right.
Because I do think other people's opinions have served me well at times. I would say more than not, other people's opinions have paralyzed me. They've caused me great heartache in many ways. And I would say that is equal on my personal path as what I would consider my more in my career. Let's just call it that, because it's pretty expansive at this point at 30 plus years. So I wanted to tee that up because I've given a lot of thought to this, because many of you may go to the point of, I kind of struggle with managing other people's opinions. Great. But I also want to invite you to think about when other people's opinions serve you.
I love it.
And so that's what kind of how I wanted to open our dialogue around this topic.
Okay, I think that's good. And I also want to add to that before we get into the more specifics is that you talked a lot of last year about naming the thing. Like whatever the thing is holding you back, is it in this instance, is it opinions? Maybe. But then let's go a little bit deeper. That's what we're about to talk about is let's be real about those moments when we really start to care. Let's just boil that down and name it. And then maybe our listeners have other things, other times when they're feeling vulnerable and like they're being beholden to these opinions. But let's just walk through that a little bit. When do we struggle
with other people's opinions? Yeah.
Like, where do we find ourselves?
Yeah, I would say that one of the key areas that, we struggle with is burden of approval.
Yeah.
And the consistent need for approval can stifle our creativity and innovation.
So just in general, you're saying I need to receive approval.
I need someone to tell me it's okay to
like whatever.
Share this idea or think differently. And I think it's finding that approval oftentimes, especially if you're thinking differently, right? Like if you're thinking differently, you need to be prepared that a lot of opinions probably are not going to align with what you're thinking because it may be reflective of a thing that most people just really are challenged by, which is change.
Right.
Right. And so again, I think it can also, that burden comes when obviously, like I said, in moments of creativity and when you're trying to innovate or when you're looking at taking a risk. And taking risk for some people is, I think, a smaller percentage of us. We're okay with risk, but I think the larger population can really struggle with it, especially if it has dollar signs attached to it. So I think we need approval in order to even sometimes think in those ways.
Yeah.
And, and then I think too, a fear of criticism or disapproval can lead to a reluctance to make any type of decision change that, you get paralyzed. When you get paralyzed. Because you're like, well, what they're going to think if I suggest this, or what are they going to think about my idea to do this? And that can be just as much in the home as it can be, in the workplace. And so again, I think we're built to interact with other people. There is to me, an innate relationship that we have of providing our own opinions and having them, as well as others. And I think opinions are fantastic when we need them in a way in order to move forward. That's when, to me, a burden sets in. That doesn't mean that you can just make decisions in a vacuum.
That's right.
But to need someone else's opinion to even just think differently, that's where I think it can hold us back.
Hold us back, yeah. I want to think of, like, if I'm putting this to work for myself, I want to think of worrying less about approval, but what I'm looking for as a leader is more consensus.
Yeah.
Or let me just start with understanding. Can you understand the why, which you and I struggled with for a long time relative to getting people to start asking that question. Well, like, why? If they didn't like it, you know what I mean? So consensus or understanding could be like an antidote to the fear.
Yeah.
Like if I can get those things, then maybe that's enough for me. If I'm really worried about this from an approval perspective. Okay. I think we also really struggle to embrace, like when we are worried about what other people think, we struggle to embrace our own authenticity. And I talked about this at the top. I'm working on this actively. And so this is really top of mind for me. I've been working on this for, I think it's probably coming up on almost a year. I figured it out in this podcast. I think I said it out loud, like, ugh, like and then now I can't stop. I can't stop with the authenticity.
Right.
I'm going to say it, I'm going to have a good intention. But why that's important is because I really believe that authenticity is a cornerstone of thoughtful and fruitful leadership. I really, really do. I don't think we can be putting on airs to it in any way, shape, or form if our goal is to achieve other people's opinion, to get approval from other people, then we're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yep.
Right? All around. So I want to embrace in my life that not everyone's always going to agree with me. Like I want to be okay with that. And then I want to try to find a balance or a middle ground through negotiation, which is almost a telltale sign of how well this is going for me or not in any given instance. As a 9 on the Enneagram, I don't do well, and not everybody does do well when put on the spot or when faced with a conflict.
Yeah.
That
Impeding conflict.
Yeah. And then having something really good to say. Well, in a conflict or in a situation as a leader where you're put into a position where you want to freeze or paralyze because you want to please, instead reach in your heart. And that's what I've been working on.
Yep.
Reaching into the heart to pull out what I'm really feeling and what I'm really thinking is best for everyone involved, not just me and not just the person. And the opinions kind of float away. They just kind of go away. Like I don't worry so much about what other people think. I welcome what other people think, but I know for sure this is how I think.
Yeah, I think, to that point, I don't think we should shy away. We certainly don't want to skew from being so dependent on other people's opinion that we're paralyzed, but we certainly don't want to go to the other extreme and avoid everyone else's opinions.
No, I don't want to avoid.
No, and that's what you're saying. You're saying, I am going to lean into others' opinions because consensus does matter to me, but I'm also understanding that maybe 50% of what I get back is not going to be in agreement with my belief or my decision or whatever. And that's okay. It's like that kind of leads into what I want to bring up next, which is to embrace the independence and the need we have for almost like we need to develop a resilient mindset.
Which you talked about. I can't even tell you how many times you said the word resilient in a good way in 2023, 2022, because that resiliency is hard.
It is. And I think it's not a muscle, clearly, but it's something that we have to teach ourselves. And I think realizing, obviously, if we care too much about what other people's opinions, we're going to constantly be at risk of ever-changing winds of public sentiment. I've been that leader before. I've been that leader that when I would get up and I would make a decision and I could see the look on people's faces, or maybe there was no look, and maybe there was somebody was courageous enough to have some immediate negative idea about whatever I had to say, or I don't know if it was negative or positive. Like I could just find myself on this ever winding road of trying to go with the majority of people's feelings at the time. What I learned to be is a little bit more resilient, and the decision that I was making needed to be rooted in something factual, and I needed to become more of a skilled leader to talk about the why. I also needed to be okay with some people weren't going to necessarily understand
That's right.
the decision, and that's okay. And maybe it would take me time to work through that with them. Maybe it was a one-off discussion. Maybe it wasn't in the group to where I was going to break through. Maybe I could privately say, talk to me about your reservations. These are just examples.
Yeah.
And it's also, the resilience, to be mindful that people aren't always going to want to share their opinion. That can be kind of paralyzing too. Yes. Like they didn't think anything of my big idea or my big presentation, and that can be off-putting as well. And so I think if we can develop a resilient mindset that involves understanding that criticism and differing opinions are inevitable. I mean, it's just inevitable. But it doesn't have to define you as a leader or a person.
Like I didn't do that poorly because they didn't have an opinion.
That's right. Right. Like we don't have to say, oh, boo.
Yeah.
They didn't agree. So it was,
I'm terrible.
Yeah. And I don't, that's obviously extreme.
Yeah.
But I think that, when we're resilient, we are able to learn the difference between receiving feedback without being okay with it versus being overwhelmed by it.
Totally.
And so, again, I think that's what I was trying to say at the beginning of this, before we got into this dialogue, is that I want opinions from people. I don't want to shy away from that. I don't want to work in a silo, personally or professionally. I don't. I want to be the type of person, whatever role I'm fulfilling at the time, that can hear someone object potentially, maybe even completely disagree, shut down something I say, but I'm so grounded that I can listen, and maybe I take a consideration from that, or maybe I don't.
Right.
And I respect that person in either way. And I think, we're about to come into, gosh, dare I say, a political climate.
Oy.
Yikes. And this is where a lot of opinions are going to be shared. They're going to be shared to our face. They're going to be shared around the family dynamic table. Mm-hmm. They're going to be shared on social media. And I think it's just easy to dismiss people. But, I think this is a time where having your own set of values and opinions, but being the type of person that can welcome somebody's that is different than yours, that's the type of resilience I'm talking about. Now, obviously, whatever we're about to head into politically, that's going to be a challenge. A good time to practice that muscle, though. I mean, a good time to sharpen that
best.
skill. So,
and the authenticity we talked about too, is kind of all comes together into a moment when you're faced with this, and you've got to lean into that resilience in order to get you through it.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned, particular you being a 9 on the Enneagram. Listen, I could look at all of the Enneagram types by number and say every Enneagram type, because we're humans, struggles with managing other people's opinions. We're either in the business of needing everyone's to be exactly lined up like ours, or we're in the business of dismissing anybody that disagrees with us. Those are the two extremes, and I can name the numbers either way.
Right.
So I think the more you know yourself, what is your relationship with other people's opinions? Maybe you do a quick assessment. Maybe you be conscious about it for the next month and say, boy, I shared some stuff, and boy, that stung a little bit. Or maybe I was so excited that someone agreed with me. That can sometimes be just as unhealthy. I think we need both.
You do.
We do, and so it's not always about garnering complete and utter consensus.
Right. Back to, you're talking about Enneagram, you and Aaron both, Aaron's my husband, for those of you that don't know that, and Danelle and Aaron are friends. We all are friends. And these two people in my life are the two who I've said over the last year or so, since we've been doing the podcast for sure, like, why do you care so much about that? Mm-hmm. You just have to be, so it's not always about you. Sometimes it's about watching other people care. Yeah. And then you go, I'm thinking like, we were talking about the cake being chocolate or vanilla, and now he's asking me why they were all about the chocolate. And I'm like, why do you care? Like, that's so frivolous. Like, I'm making it up. It's not really about cake, but like basically name the topic. You have done that too. Mm-hmm. And I know I love it. Like, when I can pull out that question to you, sometimes I'll say, well, why do you care so much? Mm-hmm. And then you'll have to think about it. Yeah. And sometimes your answer will be, because I care what they think. Mm-hmm. And I respect them as I value their opinion.
There's nothing wrong with valuing someone's opinion.
No, but it almost feels like an assault. Yeah. Like, I think that I personally don't do that. Like, my personality I don't feel that way ever. Like, I've been assaulted by words, but I know Aaron does. And I think you might tend to sometimes. Absolutely. The 6s and the 7s. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to name that. Okay. 6s and 7s. But just the fact that we're aware of it, I think Mackenzie would probably say that as an 8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it also comes to the relationship. And I think we cannot have this discussion and not honor or really think through that. Like, if it's someone senior to you, someone that you respect and you really look up to, a mentor or someone, and they have a differing opinion about your idea, that can sit differently than if it's your colleague, your peer. That's
where the resiliency comes in.
That's right. It could be your peer. Or, if your kid thinks, like, if Mackie Payton has a differing opinion on mine, she could be hurt one way and I could be the other. Maybe that has to do with the fact that I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, she's a 2. Right. Or maybe it has to be because I'm her mother and she's my daughter. So I think you have to factor in the dynamics between you and that person and really look at that as a lens to sorting through their opinion as it either aligns with yours or differs. Right. So I think that's important too.
The next thing I want to talk about is as a leader, and you led the charge at DMA for forever, but you would literally, we have a lot of, and leaders do this, is you stand up in front of a group of people and you lead a conversation, or you lead a thing, you lead a charge. I was put in the position to do that in the last 5 years. I mean, maybe more, but I'm just saying, like, I know for sure I have stood up in front of this company and said things in the last 2 years that sometimes it was crickets.
Yeah.
And I know that was something that you struggled with. You're like, oh gosh, what does that mean? That's a good thing, or is that a bad thing?
Yep.
What we learned by you becoming aware of it is that we could encourage people to have an opinion, and that it would be met with open arms, no matter the setting or the stage. So over the last year, one of the things I loved about 2023 was having these big meetings or gatherings where I would stand up and speak and open dialogue. And what I found was the key to success to that was, you used to do this, plant questions. Say something. I'd like the two of you to say something, or ask me a question, or have an opinion about the thing that I'm going to say. I didn't always have to do that. They learned it by watching us. They learned it by watching other leaders here do it with you. And then so when I had the chance to stand up, it was part of the culture. Now I've got leaders saying things that were counter, let's say, to what I said. Where, I used to would care. I do care, but it wasn't like I was crippled in the moment.
Sure.
I would rather them say something and be almost contrarian or have a different opinion than not say anything at all. I decided that. And our culture started to shape up that way. Then once other people started asking questions or having contrarian opinions, more people started having opinion. It was a safe space.
Safe space, yeah. And I'll admit, I think that was one of the things as a leader when I got the poor leadership rating, I wasn't good at. I didn't know how to accept a differing opinion for big decisions. Little decisions like, where should we have happy hour? That's easy.
Yeah.
But more critical business decisions, I wasn't always the most open-minded in that way. And that's something I had to learn to be okay with and to welcome it. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think that a lot of leaders need to really think through, and a lot of parents need to think through. As your children grow up, their opinions start to matter differently, and learning how to listen to them, and learning how to value their opinion about music, and your eyes are crossing because you think it's the worst thing you've ever heard in your life. You know what I mean? That's a terrible example. I'm just thinking of the conversation we had with Cooper last night with Cooper. But I think it is using opinions, how they come in to serve you, whether they're in agreement or they're differing or contraring, as you're saying. So I think, again, that is the point of what we're trying to talk through today.
Yeah, the culture of it. So the you leader are really in control of this, and not in a pressuresome way, but just, as long as you're doing it, more than likely, if you're aware of it and you're navigating it for yourself, more than likely other people around you are going to follow suit. And that's priceless.
Yep.
Ultimately. Okay. So relative to gaining and embracing independence from other people's opinions, and what do you want to close on? What do you know for sure?
Yeah. I think this is one of those topics that's about, it's innate. So it's like trust. We have a whole episode on trust, and we broke down trust. We had a lot of positive feedback, and I think we've ran that a few times. And I think it's because it's so innate in us. It's just, we're always around other people's opinions, and we're always giving out. It's just a natural thing that we do. I think trying to see it in a bit of a different light, I don't think it's the easiest work in the world.
No.
Because it's just, we're so conditioned to think about, and to respond to what other people think or what we think they're going to think. I think that's the other thing that we really didn't touch on a lot is, and my therapist calls this, future tripping. A lot of things that can keep us in a state of whatever the state is, whatever you're struggling with. Let's just call in this instance a state of struggle, is because we're anticipating what someone else is going to think.
It's almost self-sabotage.
It is, and that's what future tripping is, essentially. And so, obviously, that's in a different realm, but it actually happens on the regular with all of us. And so what I mean by that is it is natural. So I think I think the title is Embracing Independence from Other People's Opinion is accurate. And I think that works for this episode. But it's the independence that you have from being completely dependent on other people's opinion, needing it for complete justification, or being in the mindset of I'm going to reject anyone's opinion that's different than mine versus embracing it. Doesn't mean you have to change your direction, but embracing it. You know, I've made a lot of life choices in the last 2 years that have incited, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Incited a lot of opinions from people that I didn't even ask for. And I have had to learn on a whole nother level how to not dismiss it, but to take it for what it's worth. That's okay that they have that opinion about a choice I've made.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to change my path forward because I care about that person or I care about what they think. And, you know, again, I think there's obviously some examples where maybe you've got to end a relationship because the opinions are detrimental to you. That's not what we're talking about in this episode, obviously. But I would say is learning how, because I had to learn how to do that more in my leadership role in this business. It's served me personally. And so that's something I know for sure is that when you do this work, it's more about the person that you are. So this is a leadership, obviously centric podcast, but in this instance, these are things that we can certainly use in all areas of our life, you know, around managing opinions. And I think knowing and understanding how to truly respond to criticism or critiques by having an observer give you honest feedback. You mentioned that. That's right. You mentioned that. And so what would happen is I would give a presentation. So what I asked Megan to do, instead of trying to, you know, take notes in the meeting or think about I was like, I just want you to help me see how other people are reacting and give me some notes on that so that I can do more meaningful follow-up to see where somebody might be standing, especially if I was mentioning a sensitive topic. Or if I was mentioning it, or if I was talking about something that may be complex.
Yes.
Because I'm a big believer in sharing things like financials and those things. And sometimes that can be overwhelming for someone.
Yes.
So
I'd say to you, blank stares, question mark face.
Yeah. So if you have an opportunity, or you know, obviously have an ally or have someone that you can talk to about, hey, am I misreading these opinions or this reaction in the wrong, you know, in a wrong way? Like, help me think through that. I think too is, you know, practice. And I think we've talked around that a lot, but meaning, especially as it relates to the confrontation or something that's different, when there's an opinion being given that's different than yours, really start to practice listening to that and understanding that. And I think sometimes that's where thoughtful questions and thanking someone potentially for their feelings and opinions. Sometimes it's unsolicited and sometimes it's solicited. Being able to be grateful for it, even if it doesn't sway you.
That's right.
But it will benefit you if it causes you a pause to think about, if you value this person and what they have to say, it should, even if there's disagreement, it should strengthen both of you in that moment if it's done properly. And a lot of the times we have to own that, especially if they're providing opinions about something that is really coming from you.
Which, as you said, is coming down the pipe here with our...
Yeah. And I think it's just easy because I can't help but, wrap this with, as I just don't believe in not caring what other people think. And I know that's thrown around. You shouldn't care about what other people think. I don't operate that way. What I decided to do is get healthier about other people's opinions when it doesn't align with mine. That's what I decided to do. And I also decided to not be the type of person that needs complete consensus of everyone around me for what I may decide is best for me. And being okay with a lot at the time, people may not agree with that.
That's right.
You know, it's interesting. I just was sharing some quotes on social media, and I ran across one, and you know, it elicited, and I shared it on my stories, and it elicited some interesting feedback, because what I was just saying, I was just kind of wishing everyone a good start to the year, and I said, you know, what we are taught is that we have to follow a path or a prescription that has either been taught to us, in my instance, a lot of like preached to you. I mean, a lot of times, and then you can't veer off of that, because the expectation is you're supposed to do this thing, whatever that is. And when you decide to do something different, that looks different, that feels different, involves change, it's usually, if you're being met with resistance, because it's not part of a prescription. Right. It's not part of what we normally do around here, you know, if we're talking about the business. So I think that those are things that I have been able to think about relative to opinions. So I invite us to just get healthier with opinions, because again, I think just don't worry about what people think. I don't know that that's the healthiest approach. I think what other people think does matter. That doesn't mean it directs us.
That's right.
In every instance. So that's what I know for sure with my own experience.
I love it.
Am I still working on this all the time? Absolutely. But I have people around me that can help me with that too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm really loving this episode.
Well, good.
So good. And I hope for you listeners, it's been helpful as well. Sometimes we just need to hear that validation. Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about some music. So we've had some fun ones lately. Mm-hmm. I thought that we'd do another fun one. This one's a little bit more mellow though. Okay. So I thought, how fun would it be if we talked about quotes?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me what's my favorite mellow songs.
What's your favorite mellow song right now? You're like, I don't listen to those. I'm listening to heavy metal. No. I thought it'd be fun to talk about quotes, because we love a quote.
We do.
And I know you do too, listeners. But quotes about music specifically. So some maybe from musicians, or some maybe from people who aren't musicians. How interesting would this be? Because you and I we were just talking about this. We had lunch earlier, and I said, isn't it interesting how both of our children are so musical? Mm-hmm. Like, it's a central part of their lives. It's an absolute core. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because you and I are so musical, but we don't perform the way we want to.
I do.
Well, I mean, you do, but I mean, like, I'm not a professional, whatever. I wish I were.
Right.
But I'm not.
Yeah.
They are actually going to pursue professional something in music.
Music, yeah.
So awesome. Mm-hmm. So all that to say, let's think about some people that we really admire and what they think about music.
Okay.
So why don't you start with the first one?
All right. So this quote is, music can change the world because it can change people. And that's Bono.
Bono.
Yes. Mr.
So y'all know
U2.
I've talked about it a lot, but I really have a deep respect. I just got a book. My niece Avery gave me a book that he wrote called Surrender.
Ooh.
So he's everywhere right now.
Yeah, he's doing the thing.
But I will tell you, at this concert that they're doing, the Octung Baby at the Sphere, a lot of the messaging is around change in the world in a very positive way. So this is Bono, I think. Mm-hmm. Music is his...
catalyst for change.
Catalyst for change.
Yeah.
Oy, yum, yum, yum. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll read the next one. If the music be the food of love, play on, which is William Shakespeare. So not a musician.
No.
But arguably one of the best poets of our time. Mm-hmm. I thought that was, I like food. We like food, so we understand that.
Yes.
That deep, yummy.
Yeah, I love
the food of love, play on.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know if this is a quote, but it's definitely a thought, is I think music in itself is healing. It's an explosive expression of humanity. It's something we are all touched by, no matter what culture we're from. Everyone loves music. Billy Joel. Billy
Joel. And he knows probably, I mean, think about that song, Piano Man. Mm-hmm. You hear those keys played at the beginning and everybody knows what's about to go down. Probably everywhere.
Yeah, it's universal.
It's a universal thing. So I felt like that was really interesting, and how powerful that must feel for him sitting behind a piano.
Yep.
Okay, the next one. I love this one. I was born with music inside of me. Music was one of my parts, like my ribs, my kidneys, my liver, or my heart, like my blood. It was a force already within me when I arrived on the scene. It was a necessity for me, like food or water. And that was Ray Charles.
Yeah.
So someone who was blind believed that music was an organ. And I get that.
Yeah. It was so
And you
ingrained.
could feel it.
Like it was life to him.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, that was beautiful. And then where words fail, music speaks. And that's Hans Christian Andersen.
Yes. So Hans Christian Andersen, we probably all grew up listening to stories by Hans Christian Andersen. Where words fail, music speaks. I love it.
I do. Because I think sometimes
It's emotion.
you can hear someone try to tell you something, but sometimes a song, it just hits differently. And you're like,
God, it's
whoa.
so great. Yeah.
Like, and we've talked about our relationship with this song, but Man in the Mirror.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's just so much that is said in that song that if we were in disagreement somehow, if we're thinking about what's going on in the world and we try to have that conversation or we try to stand up and have those thoughts, I think they could easily be rejected. But that song, it almost levels the playing field.
It does.
And it, whatever the topic is. So I mean, and then you could think about a more challenging song, maybe a challenging song about, I don't know, something terrible.
Like poverty.
Or
something.
poverty or abuse or whatever. But then there's a song.
And you feel it.
And you feel it. I think it opens our minds and our hearts in a different way. So music to me has a role in creating peace, and it has a role in creating almost an understanding when we ourselves as people sometimes can't do it. And which is I think it's interesting that we're having, the episode today is on opinions and in the struggle that we can have potentially with them, whether they're in favor of what we're saying or against. I do think of music as being an equalizer, a unifier. I've always said I thought karaoke could bring us world peace.
Yes.
And I mean it.
I agree.
I mean it.
I agree.
So anyway,
Swift
I think
can
this,
too.
I didn't know where we were going to go with this music moment, but I liked where, so thank you for teeing this up. It was great.
Good. All right. So we'll have these quotes in the show notes, and like last episode, I think I mentioned we'll put our script basically. We'll type it up and we'll put it in here, what we talked about, in case you want to refer to it in the future. And thank you so much in advance for telling a friend. We really appreciate it. Don't forget, we've got lots of tools and information available for you on beselfsmarter.com. And until next week, we send you into the week with grateful hearts.
Goodbye, everyone.
As always, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Self Smarter Podcasts. You can also leave a rating or review if you enjoyed what you heard today. Not only does this mean so much to us, but it also helps other leaders and future leaders find our community. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us in becoming self-smarter. This podcast is produced by Snacks Media, and music is from a free platform. Well, that is until Brandy Carlisle reaches out to us to write the original score for our podcast. Friends, have a great rest of your day.